Hello and welcome to another episode of the Viva Bastardo show, brought to you by the Hagerty Podcast Network. Today, for the first time, we have a watch dealer on the show, my friend Adam Golden of Menta Watches. He gives some fascinating insights into the market, into buying and selling watches, into what's hot, what's not, into my miserable taste in watches and cars, my obsession with ugly things. It's very abusive, so let's get into it.
It would be great for us if it was just me and you sitting and talking shit like we normally do, but it probably wouldn't make for an interesting podcast.
No, it would be really interesting, man. Because at least to us, it'd be really interesting.
It's just going to be me making fun of you for like an hour and a half, you know?
Well, you don't think there's going to be any like tennis hitting the ball back, whatever kind of metaphor that was?
All right, whenever you want to start, let me know.
We're off, man. First of all,
we're off.
First of all, thank you for dressing up, man, for the occasion. I really appreciate it.
I had to, I brought the jacket in and everything. Listen, I'm in Miami. People forget that, like, first of all, 10 years ago when I used to practice law, I wore a suit and tie every goddamn day. And as soon as I quit practicing to do watches full time, I was like, I don't ever want to do this. And there's some dealers and people who show up to like the auctions, like dressed to the nines, like in a nice suit and tie. And it's like, I'm sitting there spending more money than they are in a jeans and t-shirt. Like no one cares, except for the one security guard at Phillips last November. I went to the bathroom at a Phillips auction. I was dressed like this, minus the jacket, so just shirt and t-shirt. And I'd taken my watch off to give it to somebody who was sitting in the crowd to take a look at it. And I go to the bathroom, I come back, and the security guard stops me, Phil. He stops me, and he's like, he was speaking French, but I understood what he was trying to say. Like,
was this in New York?
No, this is in Geneva. And it was like, are you sure you're supposed to be here? Like, no one gets stopped.
Because listen, man, he's just not down with the semen stained t-shirt vibe. I mean, you just gone to the bathroom, you'd rubbed one out, you were looking a little sleepy. Maybe you just mopped it up with the t-shirt. I do admire your commitment to the jizz rag t-shirt, man. I've got to say, it is your brand identity.
But you know what the funniest part is that,
like, Eric Wind has the glasses and the kind of like the 1950s dad vibe. You've got that.
But wait, it's like people.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, am I like in all the YouTube videos and everything? People make fun of my t-shirts, and the funny like that I look homeless and all this stuff. The funniest part is that like these are from one single brand, a Japanese brand that I really love, and they're like not cheap too. Like they're not like inexpensive t-shirts.
It's just the way you wear it, Adam. It's just the way you carry it off, man.
I guess I spend a lot of money to look homeless. I guess
you sell it is impressive though, man. But it's funny because I've been watching when you watch other dealers on YouTube. So there's a whole armada of dealers who are like super swole bros in really tight t-shirts.
Oh Jesus! Yeah,
mostly LA it seems, but a couple in Miami. And then there's you with the homeless semen stained vibe, and then there's Eric Wind with the kind of professorial 50s dad vibe. I'm trying to think
that describes him very well.
Yeah, but look, I mean, we've known each other. We should probably just explain to people who you are. You are a watch dealer. You've been doing it for how long, Adam?
Coming on 10 years now.
No shit. You're the first dealer on the program.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
You know what's good?
I feel honored.
You could tell people what a miserable fucking client I am.
I have worse. But you are pretty fucking miserable. No, I mean, listen.
Listen. Hey.
How do I put this delicately? No,
you should know you don't actually ever put anything delicately. So, and that's the joy and the misery of Adam Golden.
The problem with you is that you know almost too much, so it's like
you're trying too much.
No, it's true. I mean, and I just get sucked in by your sexy hair, so like I cave to your demands. But
and my fake tan.
You're trying to buy for the same price that I'm trying to buy for. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't always, our interests always don't align.
Because I'm a cheap bastard, man. I'm a totally cheap bastard. Absolutely, I fully admit that.
Yeah, it's you being cheap, but it's also just, education, and then there's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of buyers could use, that kind of mindset where it's like going into a purchase, doing your research, being educated about it. There's too many times where, and I don't mind because obviously I have a wealth of knowledge and I'm happy to share it with people, but there's too many occasions where I have to literally hold somebody's hand and educate them about the watch they're about to spend $100,000 on. Like you should kind of already be at that place.
Well, yeah, you feel like if you're going to spend $100,000, you should know what you're
getting.
I will say, man, I was watching some videos of you on YouTube late last night, just me and some hand cream, and I was and and I was thinking it's actually really interesting to watch someone like you look at a watch, because like I will look at watches. Sometimes I'll even buy a watch and then I'll get it and I'm like, oh fuck, I just totally missed that there was this thing or that thing wrong with it.
So,
and when I watch you look at a watch, loop goes up the thing, and you look, you like move it around, and then you like rattle off 15 things about the watch, the year, the clasp, the crown, the pusher, whatever. And it's kind of fascinating to see, because for me, I don't know. I mean, look, I'm flattered you say I know too much. I feel like I barely know anything. But it's kind of, you look at it from a purely business perspective.
I am on your podcast, so I have to, jerk off a little bit, Hang
on, let me finish my thought, man. You look at it from when you're looking at a watch, I'm watching you look at this watch from purely rational business-like perspective, whereas I look at a watch and I'm like, oh, it looks so good on the wrist, and shiny, and the blue is lovely, and all that kind of bullshit. So it's interesting to see someone look at it and analyze it so rigorously.
So it's funny you say that, because I always criticize, and there's a reason I do that, and I'll get to that in a second. It's funny because I criticize a lot of collectors, specifically, for example, and not to totally sandbag them, but like a lot of Asian collectors, for example, the first thing they do when you hand them a watch, you want to show them a watch in person, the first thing they do is they immediately go to the loop. They don't even look at the watch to see like, hey, do I like this watch? Does it resonate with me aesthetically? Is it pleasing to me? They immediately go and start looking for flaws, but they're collectors doing that. And it kind of drives me nuts, is because I think when you're buying a watch, it's very much a passion-driven purchase. It should be something that resonates with you, that you love, that grabs your attention, that you're interested in, and they're immediately going and looking for flaws. And they're not the only ones. There's a lot of collectors these days that are doing that. When I'm doing it, it's very analytical. Why? Because it's my money on the line. So that's Phil, right, as a private buyer, if I sell you a watch that's misdescribed, you notice some flaw that I maybe overlooked, you can return it to me. Obviously, I have a return policy, everything as described, et cetera, et cetera. When I'm buying a watch from somebody, it's generally a lot harder for me to return it, because I'm the quote unquote expert. I'm the professional. So it's my money on the line. I really need to A, know my shit, and B, inspect that watch in depth, because once I cut a check, that's it. It's over. Deal's done. Right. And there's no takesy backsies, so, and that's not to say that I don't make mistakes and other dealers don't make mistakes. Happens all the time. Me, based on the sheer volume, things slip through the cracks, and, I've lost a lot of money on stuff that I've overlooked, that there's been problems with watches or issues or major issues. And I've just had to take it on the chin, and that's just the cost of doing business. But yes, I inspect every single watch that I sell. So I have a lot of experience doing it. I'm talking over 100 watches a month that I sell. So it's kind of become second nature.
But it is interesting. It is just fascinating to watch, because like you say, I mean, I kind of just admire and slightly envious of that. I mean, I feel like this is just a massive Adam massaging, soapy massage conversation now. But I
can teach you, but I have to charge.
You can take me on as an apprentice now. But what was I going to say? So, I mean, we're also kind of in the middle of this. You are a couple of things. You are famously abrasive, but in the most glorious possible way. But what I find kind of lovely about that, man, is that you're also very open. Like, you'll post on Instagram the exchanges you have with people on eBay that are utterly crazy. I mean, I have to say, man, I'm kind of... I
don't sell on eBay anymore. So that's why people have asked me, like, hey, can you bring it back? I'm like, I can't, because I don't sell on eBay anymore. I gave up. Like, I threw in the towel, Phil. I threw in the towel. I had enough,
Well, it's interesting, because I try every now, I'll sell maybe 1 or 2 watches a month, if that. And in part, not because I don't like the watches, but because I've got such a short attention span that I'm like, oh, I like that. I still like that, but I like this thing more, and I must have that thing.
Squirrel.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly. But there are like three basic things that people say, and I'm sure, and this is why I doff my cap to you for making this your business, that people say. They're like, oh, let me think about it, which means no. Let me ask my wife, which means no. Let me get back to you, which means no. What are the what are the other ones? Oh, I just bought something big, which means no. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many, and it's usually whenever there's, like you said, whenever there's like a mundane excuse like that, it's you'll never hear from that person again, you know. Right. Very rarely, very rarely. Right. If they say, let me think about it, or let me talk to my wife, that's automatically.
Oh, the other one is if they ask you for the price in the comments. They'll never
that literally was just in my head. That was literally just in my head.
They will never ever buy that watch. How much? Never buy that watch.
And it's weird because you would think people asking for price are genuinely interested, but it's almost like they want to like feel psychologically better about themselves, that they're like a player in the game.
I'm
considering
actually
making
not
this big
sure.
Purchase,
I'm not sure. Well, I would also speculate that part of the thing that's glorious about the internet and infuriating for someone in your position is that you can almost buy everything. Like in your mind's eye, if you start inquiring about a watch, send me pictures, this, that, the other, you start constructing this fantasy where you are kind of considering buying this really expensive watch when you actually can't.
Right.
So it's like
when I tire kick on cars, you know.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
The same thing,
it's kind of like it's like wanking to porn.
Right.
Like you're involved. Yeah, you're involved in a fantasy. The only difference is that you're taking up someone else's time.
Right. Yeah. I try, and I listen. It's okay. It's part of the game, and you could genuinely be interested in purchasing a watch from me and then change your mind, or just not the right fit or not the right watch. Right. And that's okay. Just because you inquire doesn't mean you have to buy the watch. Right. Like you and I, how many cars do we inquire on that we don't end up buying? It's a much different kind of purchase. But that being said, I probably, I'm sure there's some car dealers out there that fucking hate me. But I'm always trying to be very respectful and mindful of their time, and very upfront about the odds of me purchasing it, or what's going to happen.
Like when you tell me you want to buy my 037, I know that's just bullshit.
I do want to buy your 037, but I'm the only.
You're not man enough.
I'm the only asshole in the world who buys a car in RM Sotheby's by mistake. So it kind of took a lot of my bankroll.
What? I bought a car from Bonhams.
Wait, you didn't hear the story about how I mistakenly bought a car in Sotheby's?
Well, you like sneezed and hit the send button?
Kind of. Okay, so
this is gonna be like one of those eBay stories where someone goes, "Oh, my kid actually bid on the watch."
I thought I told you. Pretty much. I thought I told you about this. Okay, wait. So I've been pondering tire kicking for like 3 years now on a 993 RS. Okay,
right. You want to buy a Porsche?
Well,
wait, a Porsche?
So I've wanted one of these for a long time. I ended up buying, when I was actually seriously looking, like 3 years ago, 3 years ago, I bought a Ford instead, Ford Taurus.
Wait, hang on a minute. Hold on, hang on. You were trying to buy a 993 RS turbo, and then you bought a Ford Taurus.
First of all, 993 RS is not a turbo.
All right, I don't even fucking know what. Okay, but is that because they're physically very similar looking, and also phonetically the Ford Porsche name, it's easy to confuse, so you just
yes.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, so I went with another. I had like two Grail cars. There was the Ford GT 0506 variant, and 993 RS. Okay, I ended up going for the Ford GT.
Do you still have that?
Still have that.
Yeah.
So I don't get to drive it that much because Miami has the worst fucking drivers in the world. But anyways,
everywhere in America is the worst drivers in the world.
No. We have a special breed of assholes down here. So wait. So I've been still like dreaming about this 993 RS for a long time, but I'm like, I don't have the money. Like, it's just really irresponsible. Like, it's a lot of money because the cars go anywhere from like $350 to $500 depending on the spec, whatever, So there was a local car dealer who I sell my cars through, a vintage car dealer. He knows I've been looking. He knows I've been like thinking about one for, years now. And the first RM Sotheby's sale in Miami was in December of last year. I actually was flying home from New York from the auctions, and he went like literally a couple hours before the sale started and was walking around and sees this 993 RS Club Sport. Now, A, I don't want a Club Sport, and B, was in guards red, the color I hate the most. Okay. So I'm like,
same.
I'm like, that's cool, but like, not really what I'm looking for. estimate was 350 to 450,000. Okay. And I'm like, listen,
it's a round of drinks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was like, listen, if it could be bought cheap, like, sure. But now here's where the trouble starts, because I buy a lot of watches in auction, Phillips, Sotheby's, Christie's, Bonhams, whatever, Antiquarian. And generally, when you're buying a watch at auction, let's say the estimate is 100,000 to 200,000. The reserve is 100,000, the low estimate, or maybe they'll knock off some of their premium and sell it at 95 just to push it through. Okay. So it's not $60,000 below the low estimate. That doesn't happen. That doesn't exist. Okay. So estimates 350 to 450. I'm like, listen, if I could buy the car for like 325 all in, which is like 280, 290 hammer, it's cheap. Why not? Grab a paddle. You could bid for me. And I'm thinking, Phil, there's zero risk in telling him you could bid for me, because there's no way they're going to sell it that far below the low estimate, which in my mind is the reserve. Like, zero fucking chance. So like, okay, yeah, go ahead. You want to seem like a big dick in the room putting up your paddle? Like, go ahead, bid for me, no problem. I know zero about this car, have not read anything, have not asked anybody to inspect it. This is the day of the sale, okay?
So hang on. You know how at the beginning of this conversation you said someone buying $100,000 watch should kind of know what they're buying?
Yes.
Okay, so let's just a full circle. Okay, we got it.
Full circle. Okay. So I'm putting my kids to sleep. My wife's out of town, so I'm putting them both to bed at the same time. I'm sitting on the floor in a dark room, and all of a sudden, text message pops up from my buddy Giancarlo at ASG Miami. He's like, "You got the car?" I'm like, "What?" First of all, my heart sinks, and I'm like, "What do you mean I got the car?" He's like, 290 hammer, you got it. I'm like, "What do you mean I got the car?" And I literally, Phil, I had like a fucking panic attack, because I wasn't expecting to win the car, and I don't have $325,000.
Oh my God,
so
okay.
I'm like, all right. So again, now going back to the parallels with the watch world, I'm like, okay, well, when I buy a watch in auction, usually they'll give me some time to pay. I could ask for like 30, 60, 90-day terms, or at the very least, they'll give me like 30 days, because they don't pay their consigners out for 45 days. So no big deal. I'll figure it out. I'll sell a couple cars. I'll scrape together the money. I'll figure it out, So I text my buddy Rich Lopez, who works for the New York watch department, Rich,
sure. Yeah.
at Sotheby's. And I'm like, hey, can you hit up your friend at RM Sotheby's, like somebody and see if they can get me some terms or whatever. And so he texts the guy, and the guy was like, well, you could give your client terms, but we need payment within 1 business day. And I'm like, what? So it gets better. They send me an invoice on Sunday, and they're like, if you don't pick up the car Monday, we tow it away, and you have to pay tow fees and storage fees somewhere in Miami. So great.
What could you do? What happens if you don't pay? Just out of interest.
I mean, I think they ban you. Right. You might get like a sternly worded lawyer letter threatening to sue you. I don't know. Right. I know there's certain thresholds. Like I've heard from auction house specialists and friends in the auction world that like if it's $500K and up, they might go after you legally to try to enforce it, because you have a contract with them. When you bid, sure, you have a contract. But below that, it might not be worth their time and lawyer fees and all that stuff. In this case, I really don't know. But I also didn't want to. My friend bid under his account for me.
Oh, I see.
Like I didn't want to put him. I didn't want to put him in that position, obviously. And listen, I'm a man of my word. If I say I'll buy something, I'll buy something. If I say I'm selling you a watch and the watch is yours, and I realize it's worth a lot more,
you have to go Shakespearean on me, man, with the man of my word.
No. But you know me. Like,
I know.
So I immediately call like my finance people. Because a client of mine, a good friend, he used to own Premier Financial. He recently sold it, but I'm still in contact with them. And I was like, hey, what's going rate these days? And they're like, oh, it's prime plus 3%. 10%. Like, all right, so financing's out. That just sounds crazy to me. It's not worth it. I ended up getting the money together. And before I had even sent the wire, Jordan and I walked over there on Monday, because it was right down the street from our office where they held the auction. And I guess because they knew who I was and somebody put in a good word, they literally tossed me the keys. And they're like, hey, please send the wire when you can. Because this was like first thing Monday morning. I hadn't even sent the wire, drove off with the car. And I'm like, yeah, I'll go to Turks and Caicos. I'll see you guys later,
But wait, so you got a genius deal? or not?
It was a very good deal. I ran into a local Porsche car dealer that weekend. It was like the World Cup after I picked it up, and he had one for sale asking a lot more. And he's like, dude, you killed it with that purchase. But you know how it is. Like, everybody's telling you got such a good deal, but then when you try to sell it, they're like, you paid $325 in auction. I'll give you $326,
that's there is something fascinating about that, the psychology of that. Like,
right.
If people know what you paid, they get upset with the idea of you making money. Yeah.
Well, there's two kinds of people I encounter. It's one, clients who realize like I'm running a business here and I need to make money to be able to continue to run said business. Or B, people that like, God forbid you should ever make money on a watch or a car or whatever. And you're like the devil for doing so.
I'm that one, aren't I? I feel like every time I send you a text about a watch, I'm like, yeah, if you find one of these, but super cheap.
Yeah, no, but listen, you bought a couple watches from me, and it was stuff that like I wasn't normally looking to stock, and I'll tell you like, hey, Phil, I'm being offered this. Like, I know you like this watch. Like, what, where would you be comfortable? And I'll flip it to you as if you were a dealer, just because it's not something I'd like to stock anyways, and because it's your fucking weird Phil watches.
Because no one else will buy it from you.
And you're a good friend. So like, it's all about relationships. Like I'm going to sell at better prices to people I encounter and deal with and trust and, have respect for a lot more. It's funny you say that though, because depends.
I feel that's pushing. Let's not go too far.
You do have beautiful hair, like elegant, long flowing hair.
What if this is just a fucking wig?
No, stop, Phil. You're ruining the mystique. You're ruining the mystique.
You know what I want to do? I just want to peel it off. Peel it off. That'd be amazing.
That would be amazing if it was a toupee. But it's funny you say that because we met during the Miami Beach Antique Show, where we display every year. Guy comes up to our booth and he's wearing a Tornik Revo. So, nice. Vintage Blancpain 50 Fathoms made by Alan Tornik for the U.S. military. Around 1,000 pieces were made. They were all military issued. Not a lot survived. Current market value for a good one, like a really good one, is around, say, $125,000. This guy walks up, big dick, wearing this watch, and beautiful example. And he's like, yeah, I paid $175,000. Like, whoa. Okay, cool. Listen, I'm keeping my mouth shut. Like, you're good to your money, spend how you want. He then, a month later inquires about a Blancpain mil spec we have on our site. So, which was, the same watch, but, more common and made for a bunch of different militaries.
I bought one from you.
Yeah. I'm explaining for the people at home. All right. Fuck off. So
this is an example of the silky Adam charm, by the way, dear listeners.
So Jesus, you're treating your viewers like assholes here.
I was just reminding you, man, that I'm in the gang.
You have one. I know. So anyways, I had bought this watch in Sotheby's. It was the New York sale. It was a sale that nobody really was paying attention to. There was some really great watches that sold very, very cheap. This was one of them. There was a 6542, first reference GMT Master in gold that sold for like $125,000. It was a nice example. And Davide Parmigiani was sitting right in front of me, so I didn't really want to bid against him and like poke the bear. But it should have gone for at least 200 plus. There were some good every once in a while in auction because there's so many watches. Some things get overlooked. This was a watch that, in my opinion, got overlooked. I bought it for $40,000. Generally, when you see a good mil spec come up in auction, like if it's in Phillips or Christie's or whatever, they sell between 50 to 65, depending on just how nice it is. So I thought there was value there. I love the watch. I love these watches in general. So I bought it. This guy contacts Jordan and he sees it. We have it listed for $55,000, and Jordan's like, listen, we'll give you a little discount, like 10% off, at 50 or whatever. And he's like, well, the last one sold for 40,000. We're like being totally transparent. Like that's this watch, like we got a good deal. Everybody was kind of sleeping on it, go look at other auction comps. They generally sell for a lot more. And I think I could assuredly say I sell the most vintage Blancpain than any other dealer. So I know the market very well. I love these watches. They're my favorite. And so, we'll give it to you for 50, start a relationship. It's a fair price. You can't replace this watch for cheaper. You can't go out in the market and find one.
But he didn't want to do it.
He didn't, dude. So he was like, well, I can't justify paying a 20% premium when it just sold for 40, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, listen, no problem. We ended up like even agreeing to drop it down to 48 just to because the guy's a serious guy. He was wearing $175,000 Tornik to start the relationship, but he could not psychologically accept the fact that we had bought it for 40 and we were trying to sell it now for a 20% markup, Right. And by the way, my margins average out way under that, like 10% or less. But every once in a while,
I had a similar experience. Someone offered me a watch. I knew they'd bought it at auction. I think it was a Rolex 3525. I think it went for like low 60s.
right.
And then they would said, you can have it for 75.
This was the two-tone, right? Recently,
Yeah,
we talked about. Yeah, I was
yeah.
going to bid on that. I was the underbidder on that.
Yeah, that's right. And then look, I didn't begrudge him that profit.
No, because the watch is worth that.
Right.
It's just listen, like I said, there.
You know what the thing is for me, man, is I always want to. I always want to get the bargain. Like
but,
there's
but
something.
you know what? You obviously missed it in that auction, or else you would have been bidding, right?
I think you know what happened is I looked at the watch and it just didn't. It didn't really make me fizz. Like you look at a watch, it just has to be like, you have to have. And I thought it's really nice, but it didn't. It wasn't like, I don't know. It didn't make me kind of super excited.
Understood. Yeah, but that's the thing with auction is that generally the prices are very retail and going to an end buyer's wrist, or a car, same thing. But every once in a while, dealers are able to buy an auction because there's so many watches that get overlooked because there's sheer volume. Especially if you're talking about, for example, the Geneva sales, you have 4 major auction houses selling within a 3 to 4 day period. Okay, each auction house has a minimum of 200 watches for sale. And then you look at an auction house like Antiquorn that generally has anywhere from 500 to 700 watches for sale in a given weekend. It's impossible to keep up with all of that. That's why I go to the Geneva sales and I literally go to every auction house. I don't look at the catalog until I get there. And I sit there and I go through the catalog and look at every watch and then inspect them as I go. Because if I look through it ahead of time, maybe something catches my eye, but it slips my attention, or, I just want to be there on the spot, do it so I don't miss anything. And even that, I still miss stuff. It's impossible.
I've had pretty good luck with auctions. I've found that the only way I can do it though, I've done a few like live bidding things, and it's just a fucking nightmare. Because first of all, I shit my pants. And then I always end up spending, because
that's just because you're getting old. So, yeah.
Well, there is that, man. I'm actually going right now, if you must know.
Yeah.
But I find the best thing. I've gotten some amazing deals. Just I leave an absentee bid, and that's it. And either I get it or I don't get it.
Well, that's smart, because if you bid live, even guys like me who are very seasoned and experienced get caught up, and you're like, that motherfucker just outbid me by like $1,000. Like, fuck you. No, I'm not going to let this stand. This aggression will not stand,
But I know, you know what I mean? But it is funny. There is something, there's nothing like the relief of losing an auction. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's incredible. Like, both in car auctions, watch auctions, even if it's a watch I really want, like you get up to this number and then someone outbids it, and then you feel so relieved. You have to cough up like 50 grand for this watch, even though you kind of really wanted it.
Right. 100%. There's like a relief for winning and a relief for losing. It just depends, because for me, like I'll bid on like 10 to 20 watches if it's a big sale. And if I had won in an ideal world, all of those watches, I can't afford to fucking pay for it. So you're like, okay, cool. But I always know going into it that if I'm going to bid on, let's say 20 pieces in a sale, maybe I'll win 1, 2, or 3. Like it's just so hard unless you're going to be so aggressive to win all of them. Because generally I'm bidding also against guys like you who really want the watch, and you're not looking to buy for your inventory. You're buying one watch, so you could afford to spend a little bit extra to get the one watch you really want.
Do you ever buy what? I mean, you have a collection, right? Of watches, or not really?
I do. Yes and no. So I have a small collection myself. I also collect. You've met my friend Jack in New York, right? Jack Feldman.
Maybe.
He's
yeah.
Gentleman in New York. Used to write songs for musicals, wrote all the songs for Newsies, Barry Manilow, Copacabana, all that stuff. Anyways, He's become like a second dad to me.
I thought I was second father. What?
Yeah, you're like a dirty uncle. That nobody really likes. It's kind of like the black sheep.
It's interesting. People don't know you are probably the biggest collector of the Hublot Big Bang.
Yes.
And that's, absolutely. I mean, you should really, I want to get into that.
Absolutely. Hey, Jordan, can you bring that crystal Big Bang we got? So he and I collect together, and we'll call it like our collection, where really he's just footing the bill and we're kind of doing it together.
Right.
We sold off a lot of stuff over the years though. it's hard to collect, especially running a business because wait, let's hide this for a second.
What's happening?
I'm changing watches midstream. It's hard to collect, especially as a business owner, because you don't really want to get.
What do you take off?
It's
take
this
it off,
is
Adam.
a Zenith El Primero.
I knew
A386. I love this watch. It's one of my favorite vintage chronographs of all time. Anyways, it's hard to, it's kind of like getting high in your own supply. Sure. And then in my world, there's always, no matter how much money you have, there's always something to buy and something you want to buy, big or small.
But so that's in every watch collector's world. There's always something I want to buy.
But I'm doing this as a job for my business,
sure.
So like I can't afford to really tie up a lot of money in watches that I'm not selling. So
do you find you have to kind of restrain? I mean, you must every now and then come across a watch that hurts to sell. Oh my God! You know what? I know. For people who are not watching the YouTube video, what is that? A purple Big Bang?
It's like a sapphire case Big Bang. A client sent me to sell 2 years ago. And he has still not sent me the box and papers to sell it. So
how much is that? How much is that worth? How much is that worth out of it?
I think they're listed around like 70, 80 grand. What's it realistically worth? Probably like 30 to 40. I don't know.
I have to say, I was.
It was probably a retail like 130 watch.
I have to say, it's weird. It's like admitting that I'm into something super kinky. But I was walking past the Hublot store in the airport the other day, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I don't mind some of those watches.
You know what? The weird part is first of all, Hublot is one of the best-selling brands to this day. Like, sure. I think the Dubai boutique, low-key, is the biggest profit-generating boutique of like any in the world.
That Murakami, the Murakami one is kind of cool.
And I was actually talking about this during Watches and Wonders I just came back from in Geneva. It really does. There's a lot of Hublot gets a lot of hate because yes, they make a lot of limited editions, a lot of tacky watches. They're big. They're kind of gaudy. They're very hypey. But you know what? Like, it's your money. Spend it the way you want it. And if it makes you happy, who gives a shit whether some nerd on a forum or, on Hodinkee thinks they're not cool,
Yeah, but half the joy of collecting is judging other people, man.
You can't
go through life. You can't. I like a good brisk judgment in the morning. I mean, I will say, look, if that watch was cheap, I would probably fucking buy that watch. I'll make you an all cash offer right now.
How much? Hear it.
How big is that watch?
Oh, it's, I don't know, like 45 millimeters, I think, 44?
Fuck. No, I can't. I'm wearing this anvil.
Oh, nice.
Don't pretend. Don't try.
Yeah. That's shit. That's shit.
That was Adam pretending to be nice.
It's just shit.
I mean, did you see, can we talk about the Viva watch? Or is that
Oh, God. Allowed? No, I don't give a fuck.
Okay.
I don't have any allegiance to Jean-Claude Viver. Listen, the guy's a legend, and did so much for the watch world. But I think he's trying to build something for his son to like have, as his legacy. And I'm taking the Hublot off. I'm going to put the Zenith back on. So I applaud the effort. He admittedly said the watch was rushed and they did it in like 4 months or something. I don't know. For me,
is that what he said? But why would they rush? Why would they rush it to get to Watches?
Because they were trying to release it like in a certain time frame. Look, there's a lot of really great independent watchmakers, like guys that are new, fresh on the scene, making really amazing stuff. Guys that have already been on the scene, like MB&F, Recep, like all these guys who are doing like really, really thoughtful, amazing pieces. And for me, the Viver watch was very derivative and just clearly like a cash grab based off of his name, in my opinion. I don't know. I think they should have started smaller, like to come out with a watch that's immediately $520,000. Right. It's just like, you're just like kind of tone deaf, especially considering the brands that he helped build before.
There's a couple of things that are interesting about that watch to me. One is that they're just visually, aesthetically. Well, look, like you say, you always have to precede this conversation with he's done an extraordinary amount of amazing things for the watch industry. And that's unquestionable. But when you look at the thing that he made, it's just sad because there's no original thinking in there.
Right.
Just from a visual standpoint, I know nothing about how watches work. I don't really fucking care about complications and all the rest of it, and repeating sonnerie or whatever. I don't know. I know anything about that stuff. I'm just a shallow bastard. I just like how things look, and I'm kind of into history sometimes with stuff. But I look at it and I think, to me, it's like that watch fell through the fabric of space and time from 1987. Like it's just got this look of the 80s. There's nothing visually interesting about it. And then the second thing that's also very fascinating is to watch the amount of people and who seem to think it's great. And look, maybe they do think it's great, but I just find it hard to
I think there's a lot of
would.
people kissing the ring. If you look at the social media comments, like when they first, put out pictures, like Revolution or Hotinki or whoever posted on their Instagram, and the vitriol and amount of like negative comments like far exceeds the amount of positive. That's not to say that I don't think they can do great things in the future. I think this was just an example of a watch that was clearly rushed, that they didn't put enough thought behind. I'm not saying they didn't put any, but they didn't put enough thought behind. It wasn't anything unique, anything new to the market, anything exceptional in terms of, in my opinion, the quality. I think you're just buying the name.
Did you see it in person?
I did not, because my flight was like severely delayed. So everybody went to the event without me, and I got in after the event had already ended. Right. I do love the bracelets. I'll give them that. The bracelets are kick-ass.
Cool. I think it's cool.
Bracelets are kick-ass.
Yeah.
But I mean, listen, the buyer of that watch is not us anyways. They're not targeting us, guys like you and I. So I've heard that a lot of them have already sold. I know Material Good is representing them in the United States. I'm sure, I presume they've already sold some, because there's going to be buyers out there who just, right now, everything independent's so hot, Right.
I guess there are things, when it comes to collecting, there are things you buy because you love them, and there are things that people buy because they say you can buy them.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like you can
absolutely,
like a Jacob & Co. watch. I mean, I don't understand any of that stuff.
Did you see that $20 million watch?
It's just so fucking ugly.
It was the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I know.
And there's no way somebody's going to pay $20 million for that. If they do, like, Jesus, I got a bridge I can sell them. Like, that was the craziest shit ever.
Yeah, but that's genius, because he'll sell it for whatever he's going to sell it for, but then it'll always be the $20 million watch.
Right. But he's been doing that for a long time. He's been coming up with those gimmicks for a long time. So it's nothing new.
Did you see anything at Watches and Wonders that you liked?
I did. There's a lot of stuff that I liked. Hold on, I'm looking for the support thing. I don't see it on my desk. Anyways, this is actually a really good year for releases. The Lange Odysseus chronograph was really nice. Rolex actually did some interesting things for once. I really liked the gold GMT on Jubilee. I really liked the new Daytonas, how they changed the dimensions of the registers to mimic the original dimensions of the Zenith Daytona. Pretty cool. They should have done that from the start. There's a lot of brands. Chopard, that Luke, the salmon dial, was really, really nice. That's a really nice watch.
For that.
Yeah. Urwerk, which wasn't at Watches of Wonders, trying to get one of these watches. They made this round case watch that's just phenomenal.
I feel like talking about Urwerk, I find that that watch is the most successful piece of design for me that I've seen of their stuff. I feel like I really want to love their watches, but then I feel like it's like a beautifully crafted sentence that doesn't really have a point. Like, I love the idea they're going to make this super futuristic thing, but somehow it doesn't work for me. Like, it just, it's too busy, or it's not, the proportions are weird, or I don't know what it is, because I really want to love them. And maybe when you see it in person, it's amazing. I don't know.
With that brand in particular, and Urwerk, and the guys, I went to a cocktail party to see these new watches, and I met the owners of the company, and they're brilliant guys, really awesome. But yeah, you're buying into the design. You're buying into, a piece of horology that's like technologically advanced. It's not so much the aesthetic at that point,
but their whole thing is the design. Like, isn't their whole thing? And that's the thing for me, is the design somehow feels like it's not. It doesn't. It
See, that's the great thing about the watch world. Is that it's all subjective and no one gives a fuck what you think, Phil.
Well, you're absolutely right, man. It's totally subjective.
I think with them, though, you're buying into the technology and like what they're able to make. It's kind of the same as MB&F, and I met with Max. I went to his Mad Castle, where his production facility is. amazing watches, so much to the extent that I want to buy one now myself. And they've never really been on my radar. I've sold a couple of them, but I've never like wanted to own one for myself. And now I'm really hunting for a Legacy Machine 101, LM 101.
What, is
really,
that the one with the multiple, like the things?
No. So it's the round one, 40 millimeters, and it's just time only. And it has the balance in the middle. Right. It's very simple, because all their other cases and designs, while they're, like the Bulldog and this and that, they're incredible in terms of their design and what he's been able to achieve, the same as her work. But for me, they're unwearable, just because I have small girly wrists. So they all feel huge on me. I can't wear anything really over 40 millimeters comfortably. So I appreciate them from afar. It's not something that I could personally ever own. I understand which one.
The one you want.
I don't know what the retail is. I think the retail is around like 60 now, but you can't, there's like 4 years out. You can't, right. It's crazy to even try to get them. And Max is like the greatest guy ever. Sure. Like, honestly, you'd love him. Like the guy,
he's been on the podcast.
Oh, he has?
Yeah.
Oh, so you know him. Yeah. He's like the fucking man, like greatest guy ever. But even then it's like,
I can see you're a real fan of the Viva Bastardo podcast, Adam.
I've listened to a few episodes. I listened to the very first.
It's too late, man. It's too late now.
I listened to the very first with Strahan, and then a couple others. I can't remember off the top of my head.
You fell asleep too.
I did. I listened to you and Strahan actually while jogging. It was very memorable. So Max is like the greatest guy ever, but like even that being the greatest guy ever, you still can't get a watch, Right. Like, come on, you're so nice, please sell me one. Like, nope, and it's not that he doesn't want to. And a lot of these guys, not that they don't want to, it's just that they don't have the means to produce more without like compromising on quality. It's not like the bullshit canned excuse that Rolex gave. Like, this is actually true because of how intricate their watches are, and how, long it takes and how tedious it is, and the quality controls they put over them. We went and visited, actually probably one of the most interesting things we did was we went and visited the LVMH factory for Louis Vuitton watches, who are low-key making some of the most complex and beautiful watches in the game.
I totally agree, man. I think LVMH stuff is amazing.
Dude, they're making
I am sort of disappointed. I was thinking, how they've acquired the Gerald Genta brand, they're going to relaunch Genta, and I was thinking the thing about Genta is it's kind of like he kind of followed the same career path as David Bowie. Like, I'm a massive Bowie fan, right? But right up to Let's Dance. Okay, so right up to Let's Dance, Bowie was indomitable. He was fucking genius. Like, everything he made, Ziggy Stardust, Hunky Dory, Lodger, all the multiple personas, Aladdin Sane, it was incredible. And then after Let's Dance, he kind of fell off the cliff and didn't really make much that was amazing musically.
Right.
And so Genta was amazing in the 60s and 70s. And in all the shit he did for himself, I cannot think of one watch, and I could be wrong, that is not just a crime against horology.
You're wrong.
Visually speaking. Okay. So okay. Oh, you see? I'm coming to grips with my genius Obi-Wan wisdom.
I am a fan of
Don't tell me the Mickey Mouse watch.
The Mickey Mouse, absolutely. They're cool.
Get out.
Also, they were making some like really awesome perpetuals at a time. And the case shape is not ideal, but they were making with some like beautiful like MOP dials and stuff like that, and like perpetual minute repeaters when a time when no one was really doing it because it didn't make sense from a business standpoint for them to do it like in the 90s, because like it wasn't really profitable. But they made some really awesome watches. But yeah, I agree. Like, it wasn't Genta's best case design, like the Nautilus, the Royal Oak, all of those designs were, sure. The pull router, all those stuff was more commercially successful because it was more, aesthetically pleasing. The watches that he made for himself, probably not. But yeah, I'm excited to see what LVMH does.
But you're right about LVMH, man. They are making.
Dude, so we're walking around their factory, and that's the point I was making though, is that like to make some of these watches, these really, really high end, hot horology, these crazy pieces. The running joke as we're walking through the factory, we're like, well, how long does it take you to do this, like with the case or whatever, they machine this or whatever, and they're like 400 hours, per watch. But that was just for like one little component, and so the running joke, as we're walking through the factory, is like everything takes 400 hours, We're just like, how long does that take? 400 hours, But like you
just order your sandwich at lunch. How long is that going to take? 400 hours.
Dude, but like watching these guys work and like the way these watches were made and like seeing it all yourself, you have so much more respect because it's just so crazy. Like the patience you have to have, the artistry, the technique, that's why like guys like Max and like all these guys, they're geniuses because it's not easy to execute. I met also with another independent watchmaker who used to work for Max. He was an engineer actually. You're going to read about him probably soon on Hodinkee, and I think he's going to blow up. A young guy who, in the middle of COVID, had a newborn kid. And he was like, started designing his own watch. And he's like, you know what, I want to do this instead. And so he left working for Bucer and designed his own watch. And like the thought that went into it.
What's this person's name?
Simon Brett.
Okay.
Keep an ear out for that. I'm hopefully getting one of his watches, but in 2027, I have to give like a deposit. But like, even down to like the screws, he made these like on the back of the watch, these concave screws. And he was explaining like the process to get these made and have them machined because no one else was doing it. And the cost, it was like, let's say each screw on the back of a watch costs $2. This was costing like $180 per screw. And it was like difficult to get done, but like, the justification for it, and when you saw the result, was just like, wow, And there's a lot of watchmakers out there, that are getting the recognition, but that are making some fantastic fucking watches and interesting stuff. Like look at Sarah Paneva, with the big moon phases and stuff. Yeah. We met him too, and it's just like hearing these guys talk about their craft and what goes into it. It's so much different than buying, your Hublot, your Rolex, your Patek, whatever.
This is totally depressing me, man, because I'm making my own watch. Now I feel like a total barbarian. Yeah, I feel like such a savage because
you're doing it from a design perspective, like something interesting. More of just on like the actual look of the watch. It's a completely different thing. You're doing more of like a Bamford style kind of design, where you're just modifying an already existing watch.
No.
You're making your own watch
from scratch.
Oh wow.
It's
so fucking hard.
No, I know. I've been at it for 2 years, man, and it's interesting because it's almost ready.
Is that nice?
Well, it's like it's sort of a collision between the Rolex Midas.
Everybody buy Phil's watch.
Well, maybe not. It's a
20% off discount code. Phil's watch sucks.
Discount code sucker. It's a collision between the Rolex Midas and brutalist architecture, of which I'm a huge fan, because I feel like as you know, and as you've mocked me soundly for the last couple of years, I'm totally obsessed with all that stuff from the 70s because it was so sculptural, and no one is really doing what's interesting about independent watchmaking, and is that it's a movement that so many people seem to be doing a similar kind of idea, which is skeletonized, multiple subdials floating above a skeletonized movement, like super complicated, like it's an orgy of shit happening on the dial. And no one is making anything that's really sculptural and incredibly kind of simple and like an artifact.
There are a lot of, look at Recep's watches, not the Acrisia side, but look at Recep Reci.
No, I saw that.
It's a very simple watch, just very beautifully executed. But then you look at smaller brands like your Furlan Maris, your Baltics of the world, the revamp of like Nevada.
Look, those guys those things are beautiful, but what they're doing is they're making, it's a copy-ish of things or an amalgam of something that exists.
You just said you're basing your watch off the Midas.
No, I'm not. I'm not. It's because I'm saying it's inspired by, but it's not a copy. If you look at it, it's its own thing. Absolutely, its own thing.
Who's making it for you?
I'm doing it with a friend of mine, and it's happening out in China, in Hong Kong. Oh, really? Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But it's a Swiss movement, all that kind of bollocks.
Right. The case is from China, though. That's common.
Yeah, it's 904. It's the same. It's 904 steel, so it's like the same steel that Rolex is. Ordering cases and dials from Switzerland. Please, you'd be 5 years out, and it costs a fortune. Well, that's the thing is we looked into it, and as you say, it was really, really expensive, and the timeline was just I'll be 60 by the time the watch is out.
That's awesome, dude. I didn't know you were doing that. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you can congratulate me when you see it if you like it, man.
But you know what? It's still an accomplishment to actually do it because people don't realize what goes into actually making your own watch.
Sure.
very, very complicated. It's very, very hard. There's a lot of bureaucracy bullshit. There's a lot of, in terms of getting product and getting supplies and this and that, getting people to assemble them. So a lot goes into it. A lot goes into it. It's not easy. It's very time consuming. And I hope your watch is great and I'll buy one. And if it's shit, then
you'll tell me.
I will. I will absolutely tell you.
It is interesting though, hearing you talk about touring the factories. And I have this kind of, I guess I have watchmaker envy in a way, because, as you say, the thing that we're making it's not like, I'm not analyzing each screw and all the rest of it. It's about sculpture for me, really. But ideally,
different watches,
Sure.
like it's like comparing buying an old F1 car to just buying a regular street Ferrari, like there's
Right.
different, there's different,
Sure.
different strokes for different folks kind of thing, It's,
So wait, now that you mentioned cars, man, let's talk about you were not interested in cars. I mean, every time I post cars, you just laugh at them and you mock them, and then all of a sudden you fell down a car rabbit hole.
Well, I've always been a car guy. I just could never really afford the cars
Right.
I liked until, the past few years. I do mock your cars a lot because I'll give you this. You have very unique taste. You have and listen, I've grown to respect it and appreciate a lot of it.
Now is the right time for a public apology about the Shamal.
No, of course still.
Come on, man! You mocked that car.
I like the driving experience. The boxy flares are still. It's cooler than I thought it was going to be. From your pictures, that's as close as you're going to get to an apology.
That's a very unusual. That's the best I'm going to hope. That's the best I'm going to get.
From your pictures, it looked like shit. It looked like it's just like a design failure.
Right.
It was cooler in person. I'll give you that. Would I buy one? If I was a rich man, la-di-da-di-da-di-da, maybe. But like, it wouldn't be like my first choice.
What's the
dream
dream
cool,
car?
Though.
What's the dream car?
I mean, you don't like Porsches, so I'm just gonna.
No, I do. I don't know. I don't mind Porsches, man. I like Porsches, but I feel like that, there are so many. Look, the thing about Porsches is that, so it's like Rolexes. Like
it's like Rolex, yeah. It's like Rolex, yeah.
Yeah.
Dream cars, for me are like 993 GT2, so the turbo version of the car I already have.
Non-Porsche.
Okay. On my radar next, I really would like to own at some point an RS200. We talked about that. I really would. I mean, listen, like the ultimate dream car, just, a McLaren F1, just like kind of like 1518, Protect. I don't know, man.
I would love one of those the newer Gordon Murray cars. Have you seen those?
Dude, I read yesterday actually that only 4 out of the 100 clients spec'd it with a PDK, or not PDK, but automatic transmission. And so he scrapped it all together because he was like, fuck you 4 guys. Like, you're only 4 out of 100 and we're making them all manual. Good for you, man. Yeah.
You know what's interesting about those cars is the one with the kind of crazy turbine fan, whatever is in the back, the more expensive one. I can't remember the cheap one. I think looks better than the more expensive one.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, I do know what you're talking about, but like, those like crazy, boutique hypercars, like I don't pay too close attention to them because it's just too much fantasy for me. Like,
but an RS200 is in some ways a crazy boutique. It's just not that level of cash.
No, but I'm saying in terms, that's my point. Like I'm never going to be in a position, maybe never say never, but like, I don't see myself being in a position to afford one of those cars anytime soon, or realistically even buying one, because I like to also buy cars that are usable, which is my biggest problem with the Ford GT. I wanted that car since it came out, and I finally was in a position to buy one after. It is super usable, but like I'm in Miami where my daily car, which is a 997 Carrera, not super expensive car, has got hit twice within a month while I was stopped at a red light. Once in the front, once in the back, so it's like, it makes you paranoid driving these like expensive cars. The Ford GT is usable when you're in the car, but getting in and out is not really usable. And it's like, if I'm going to
wait till you're my age, you just got to roll out on the floor.
We drove around in your Jaguar, and like, it was amazing. But like, how often? Yeah, but like, how often do you really get to use it and like use it the way it's designed?
It's a daily, man. Take the kid to school.
That car is amazing, though. That car is sick.
Did you drive it?
Around the parking lot.
Yeah. Isn't it? It's
Yeah.
easy to drive.
It was easy to drive for sure. It wasn't as
Right?
intimidating as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, for sure.
You gotta get a sense of like how long that nose is, and you're
Right.
good, you know?
Yeah.
So crazy car though. You have one of the coolest like collections like that's ever changing of anybody I know for sure.
Thanks, man.
Because you think outside the box, you know?
This is weird.
You're like, oh, that's fucking ugly. Let me buy it, you know?
See, I was freaking out because you were being nice, and then you and then you and then you went back to real Adam, to normal Adam.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. Look, I mean, I guess the thing I feel about cars in particular is that, well, there's because I have limited funds. There's a very small gene pool in which I can kind of paddle around it. So why not explore whatever you can explore while you can? You know what I mean?
Sure. That's what I've been trying to do is that like, so when I first started buying quote unquote expensive cars, like I jumped into it without really not knowing what I was doing. And I lost a ton of money on those cars, reselling them as one does. Now I try to buy a little bit more educated. I still, you know, if I'm buying from a dealer, I want them to make their money. I'm going to be respectful, but I'm trying not to get killed and be a little smarter about it, which allows me to buy a car, drive it for a year, and then sell it, you know, while just kind of losing my expenses that I put into the car. Right. So the cost of ownership is cheaper. But I think that really is, you know, what you said is key. It's like trying to experience a lot of different things while you can. It's harder to do that with cars than it is watches. Watches are easier to transport. You know, it's like, if you want this watch on my wrist, like, all right, I'll overnight it to you today. Send me a wire when you get it. No problem. Whatever. You know, there's no transfer of documents. There's no.
That actually brings me. That's the most devious and genius thing that dealers do. When if your friends, like if I say, oh, I like that watch, you go, oh, just send it to you. You can see how you like it. Because you know, the rule of inertia is so powerful. You're like, fuck, all right, I'll just, you know what, I can't be bothered to go and FedEx it back to you. I'll just buy it. I feel like that's the secret evil. Okay, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, man. What's the percentage of people who send them back? I feel like it must be 10%.
I just sent a Patrizzi Zenith Daytona to a client yesterday, a friend Drew in Pennsylvania, and he sent it back today. And I have a client come to see it today because he was just like, we're just not resonating with me. No problem. Send it back. I would say it's like 70% they keep it, 30% they send it back.
It's a genius idea.
But you know what? Like, first
you
of all,
want to buy the 037, man?
Listen,
if you want to buy the 037, I'll just ship it to you. Just see how you like it, man.
But that's what I'm saying. It's a lot harder to do that. It costs me what, $100 to overnight the watch to you. Sure. Like, you can't just send me a car for me to test drive it. And for the people listening, like, please do not contact me and ask me to like just ship you a watch for you to take a look at it. Like, Phil and I have known each other a long time, like going on like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years now. So I trust him and I will send him whatever he wants to take a look at. And I'll do that with certain people. It's obviously not with everybody. It's people that I know and I trust. And it's not like there's no ulterior motive of getting them to keep the watch. It's just sometimes, you know, how many cars do you wish that you've bought that you wish you could have like seen in person and drove before buying it, and you get it and you're like, I already paid for it, so I'm like forcing myself to love it. You know, I've had a few cars like that, and I've had many watches like that where it's like, if I had seen it in person, put it on my wrist, and like spent a little bit of time with it, I probably wouldn't have bought it. You know,
you always know with watches, you know that feeling when you open up the package, and then your heart just sinks. Like the moment you see it, like, it doesn't, the proportions don't seem right in person, or it's not whatever.
But that's gutting. My point, you know? So like, that's why, you know, ideally I would let people, you know, be able to experience the watch before like fully committing to it. It's just, obviously it's not possible in every scenario. It's not, but it's not like, yes, you're right. When you send somebody a watch that they're like already interested in, they're like, all right. But generally that's not like the purpose of me sending a watch to somebody ahead of time, you know?
Sure.
Giving away my secrets, Phil. Giving away my secrets.
Well, shit, man. I mean, I feel like I've taken up a lot of your time with the blathering. What time is it? We've been on for an hour at least.
Okay.
You want to talk for another 2 hours?
I could hear you whisper sweet nothings to me all day.
You can look at this mane, this luxurious mane.
So sexy.
Well, actually, one last thing.
It's the British accent too. It's like it's the hair coupled with the British accent. It just, it really does. It gives a stir in my belly. You know.
You know, I just did a semester abroad.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah,
it's all fake.
Yeah, totally, man. I didn't go.
You and Magnus Walker just like faking it through life.
Yeah, that's right. We did it. We took like an 8-week DVD class. Learning the English accent. I do want to ask you one last thing.
Sure.
So there's been, for a lot of people who started collecting in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been this sense that you buy a watch and then you can turn around and sell it for, twice the amount you paid for it 6 months later. So now,
let me sit back. Sit back for this one.
So what's that like from the perspective of a dealer? Because you must have people who
fucking miserable, Phil. So I remember a time before I was even a dealer, as a collector, I would buy a watch, and like if I'm buying it from a dealer, which I did all the time, I would understand that like I'm paying a retail price, but I have the peace of mind getting it from a dealer that they've inspected the watch, I have a warranty, or it's good or whatever, and I would expect to lose money. So like, for example, I'll buy a watch for $10,000. I wear it for a year, sell it for $9,000. The cost of ownership was $1,000 to wear that watch for a year. Meanwhile, 8 years, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, you go buy any car, drive it off the lot, you immediately lost 30%. So like when you did it with the watch,
if you're lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky, if not more, with watches, generally, if you buy smart, you're not going to lose your ass. So the cost of ownership is low, and that's great. In the past 3-4 years, because the market has been so hot, everybody buys a watch, and people have been buying watches, and the market went up, so they sell it, they make a profit, and that feels good. They made some money, and then they expect every transaction to go that way. Yeah. I have clients who will buy a watch and then literally within weeks turn around and be like, hey, what can we get for it now? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, well, hasn't it gone up? What? So at the very least, they want to break even on their purchase. I mean, shit, so do I. I buy watches all the time that like, I'm like, listen, I'm going to pay $20,000 for this watch. I think it's worth $25,000. I'm so sure of it. And then I get it and nobody fucking agrees with me, and I have to sell it for $15,000, and I take a $5,000 loss. Like, but I'm used to doing that. Like, and I'm not afraid to take a loss. There are so many people, they've gotten so complacent in the past few years because the market has just gone up, that they could, God forbid, they should lose a single dime reselling their watch. And it's very frustrating. There's a lot of people who get it, and that are realistic. But there are way too many people who just don't understand that. And they forgot what it was like to buy a watch. Listen, a watch, just like a car, is like a piece of art, is a non-essential luxury good. We don't need these to live. We just want them. So yes, they are good, quote unquote, investments if you buy them right and you're patient. But there's no such thing as a guarantee in life, and if you're buying a watch as an investment, primarily, you're already behind the 8 ball, because you should be buying them because you're passionate about them, like guys like you are, that should be your first primary motivating factor. And my clients who do the best on watches in the long term are the guys that like, they'll buy a watch from me. They're not really caring so much about, how it's going to retain its value and, et cetera, et cetera. They just really love the watch, and they come back 2-3 years later, whatever. And they're like, hey, I've worn it. I've enjoyed it. It's time to move on. What could I trade in for you? Like, I paid you 20 grand for this watch. I'm like, well, market's gone up. I could give you 30. And they're not even paying attention. Like, oh, really? That's great. Those are the guys that do the best, I'm getting in right now on consignment, for example, an AP Sonnery from like the 90s, like just a simple yellow gold minute repeater AP. Client, I helped source for a client out of China. He bought it 2.5 years ago for like, at the time it was like all the money was like 36 or 40 grand or something like that. Nobody wanted this watch, just 90s AP, like nobody cared, like, kind of, whatever watch. One just sold yesterday in Hong Kong in Sotheby's for 105 grand. Now, when this guy bought it, he just wanted it because he liked it. He's like, oh, I think that's good value. Like, it's a beautiful watch. It's a repeater for like 40K, AP. Wasn't really thinking though about like future upside. You know what I'm saying? He just liked the watch, bought the watch, and here it is now. It's worth like 6 figures. They've gone up a lot. People have caught on that they were supremely undervalued. And those are the guys.
I can't say that about anything I own.
It's hard. It's hard to time the market. And that's why, there are a lot of dealers out there who will buy a watch and then tuck it away for 10 years, and let the market just kind of blossom. It's really hard to do that though. A, for somebody like me, because it obviously ties up money, but B, you just never know. There's no guarantees in life. There's no sure bets. unless you're buying something that say it's worth 100,000 and you're getting a great deal and you're buying it for 40,000, you already have that inherent value. So like, sure, you can wait an extra 5 years and hope it goes to 200, you already have that luxury because you have that built-in cushion. But generally it's hard to time the market. It's hard to understand and predict the market because the watch market's just like any other market, like stock market, car market, goes up, goes down. It's beholden to what's going on in the global market,
It is interesting though, because I think for people there is this kind of mindset that when you're in the middle of an up market, so many people never consider the possibility of a down market.
Yeah.
And psychologically, it's interesting, like the idea that people were buying these Daytonas or these subs or whatever it is, and they were not rare watches, and they were expecting them to triple in value. But why would they?
Yeah,
they're not rare.
It took a lot of collectors by surprise, especially like around August, September of last year when the market kind of really, really corrected itself.
Yeah.
And crypto crashed, and, the war and this and that. And a lot of these guys were relatively new to the game. So like you said, they hadn't experienced a down market yet. And it was very interesting, like them offering me a watch. It's like, let's say it's some Batgirl, or some Hulk, and they were going for over 20K. And it's like, well, I can only pay you like 15 for it now, like, what do you mean? Last month it was 25 grand. I'm like, but it's not anymore. And they just couldn't accept that. So like, It was really hard for like a period of like 60 days to buy any of these watches. Like it was almost like business was frozen because nobody was willing to take the loss except for dealers. You know what I'm saying? But privates weren't expecting or able to accept the change in value. And they were like, I'll just hold on to it. And then they realized that just holding on to it wasn't going to help their situation improve.
Right.
So then they came around and started selling them, and meanwhile, since prices dipped strongly, they've stabilized, and even some models have gone up, like the ceramic Daytona you bring up. They were at their peak, like let's say a Panda, new card, recent date was trading at like 45, 50K. Then they crashed all the way down below 30. Now, if you ask me, like when we hang up, like, hey, Adam, find me a brand new Daytona right now. The old model, the one that was just discontinued because none of the new ones are out yet. The 116-500, it's going to cost me like 35 grand for it. And they dip below 30. So they've gone back up a little bit. It's kind of like, again, it's all cyclical. I think people panicked last year when the market crashed and, just kind of started dumping things. But the watch market's just like any other market, which for me is a good thing. It shows that there's stability there, that there's like lasting, staying power there. If it was just a fad and then everything crashed and then, never came back and that was it.
like bubble bags.
Right. Yeah. Well, even bubble bags have a good market,
Right.
It's just a much more niche market. But like it shows that like the watch market overall, whether it's modern, vintage, doesn't matter. There's so many people involved now and there's so much interest and it's so much more global than it was, let's say 10 years ago. That is an actual market. Like it's an actual asset class now. And as an owner of a expensive watch or a collector, a fan, whatever, it's reassuring to know that there is like, it's almost like a currency that it's backed, it's not just like crypto that will like vanish in the air, like, or an NFT, like poof, one day it's there, one day it's gone.
Let me ask you this, man. Well, how much is this worth now? This Blancpain. Go on, give me. I'm interested to know.
I haven't sold one of those in quite some time. I would say probably in the 8 to 12K range. I don't know. It's probably been 5 years since I sold one of those.
Really?
No shit. Yeah.
No shit.
They don't come around very often. So maybe it's worth more. I really
so
don't know.
So much more, man. So much more.
Yeah. But like that was of like the vintage Blancpain world. That was always a much more niche model. Everybody looks at the 50 Fathoms, they look at the mil specs, they look at the Tornics.
Because there's a couple of things. One is it's much rarer than those watches. Two is it's much uglier than those watches.
Yes.
But in
at
a
least
kind
you
of,
said it, not me.
Because I was, I knew you were going to say it, so I thought I might as well just kick myself in the nuts and give you the pleasure, Adam.
But you know what? You got it. You have a unique vision of buying fucking ugly watches.
They are not. You're talking about my 70s stuff.
For such a sexy guy, you buy such ugly watches, ugly cars.
You know what, man? You know what? Give me a watch that I have that's ugly. Come on.
Oh,
see?
No, I'm just kidding. No, you have great taste in like pre-Daytonas. I really appreciate your respect and an admiration for like 50s Rolex chronographs like that, like a lot of people overlooked because it doesn't say Daytona on the fucking dial.
Right.
And they're some of the most unique pieces in the Rolex world.
I love those things.
Yeah.
You're talking about all the 70s Patek stuff that you hate.
I mean, they're not my taste, but again, that's like we said earlier, like this is all subjective, and that's the beauty of the watch world, of the art world, of the car world. You know, is that like there's no wrong answers. You like what you like, and that's that. You know, and there's just because I don't like it doesn't mean your choice to buy and wear that watch is wrong. You know,
it means you're wrong. It means you're wrong.
I'm always wrong, so it's okay. But, you know, and that's the beauty of it. You know, you personally have a unique vision and you don't give a fuck what other people think, which is great. And it's kind of individualized. You're right. Rolex is like Porsche. It's boring. It's very vanilla and commercial. And a lot of people like that, you know, the funny thing is, I like that.
But the thing about Rolex is it is and it isn't. Like if you like, that's why I like all the pre-Daytona stuff. Like if you root around, you can find really unusual design, really interesting, really sophisticated, subtle variants and things that are super rare that aren't necessarily a lot of money.
You brought up bubble backs. Look at the design of some of the dials and the bubble backs. Amazing. Insane. Like why they don't do that anymore. Like the sector dials, the gilt dials, all these crazy variants that like they were so beautiful, you know. I mean,
I really believe that if bubblebacks were 36 mil, they would be the most collectible.
Yeah, but there are like semi bubblebacks that are 36 millimeters, you know, and stuff like that.
Yeah, but the true 32 mil, those ones have the craziest dials.
For sure.
Yeah.
You know, it's a shame that Rolex doesn't bring some of that stuff back, but now they're making puzzle watches with fucking emojis. So I don't know, you know.
I mean, I gotta say, man, I think it's pretty ugly looking, but I admire. I'm kind of happy that they did that. You know, like
for sure, they're like, you know, not taking themselves so seriously, which I appreciate. Right. And the funniest part is going to be that, like, even though that watch sucks, it's going to be like the hardest one to get because those dials are only apparently made by like one guy. And so he can only produce like such a finite amount of them. So like no one's going to get them. And that's what I heard. It's going to be like the hardest one to get, you know?
I really love that palm dial. I know you have one of those.
You want me to send it to you? Take a look.
Yeah, just have a look. Seriously, man, I kind of want, but I kept waiting for the price to drop. Why is the price not going down on that?
Because they're awesome. I had one myself personally, and now it's with Jack in New York. I love that watch. Like that's such an interesting dial, and like the way they like reflect back at you, like it's one of those watches where it like looks different depending on the angle you're looking at it. It was just something very interesting that Rolex did. They only did it in the 36, which is perfect size.
Is that, they discontinued or it's still going?
I think it's still going. I don't think that was discontinued this year. You know, and it sucks because like Rolex, like they made some beautiful stone dials this year, but they fucking always make them with the diamond indices at like 369 or whatever. Right, yeah. They can't just do normal. So like they did the Eisenkaiser last year, which was beautiful, and they did baguette indices. And I wish they would just do normal markers with no diamonds whatsoever.
I wish they would just do like a stoned out date just like they did in the 70s. That would be the business. And but white gold, man. And white gold or platinum. Fuck, that would be amazing.
Exactly. No markers whatsoever. But if you're going to do markers, do it like the Eisenkaiser and just do baguettes that are very subtle. When you do like the diamond markers that are like the 3-6, you know, Arabic numerals, it just looks like shit. And so they came out with these beautiful stone dials this year. Like, bravo, Rolex, but you fucked it up by putting those goddamn markers on it, you know? If they would just do no markers like their original ones, it would be knockout. People would be fawning over to get it, you know? Sorry, it's my wife calling me.
Does she not know who I am?
She's better off for it.
Yeah, everyone is better off not knowing who I am, to be honest.
Right. So,
all right, man. Well, look, I'd love to talk more, but I've got to go to CrossFit, man. I mean, I know you're always commenting on my...
The saddest part is that you're serious about that.
It's so true. It's so true.
Sad.
Listen, man, this doesn't come easy, what you see here.
Can we get like some video of you doing CrossFit? Is that possible?
Oh my God, man. It's like watching
I'll pay for that. OnlyFans of Phil doing CrossFit.
It would just be sad. Because it's like I'm lifting basically for like Johnson cotton earbuds.
And there's like this like 35-year-old like housewife like killing you at it.
Absolutely.
Like, lifting the tire like, you pussy.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. That is so true, man. And I have to take a break every 5 minutes. I'm wheezing like a punctured bagpipe. I mean, the whole thing, man.
That's all right though. You have cool cars, so
Yeah.
we'll give you a pass, and relatively cool watches. So it's okay.
Well, look, man, I just want to say thanks so much for coming on. I mean,
Dude, thanks for having me.
We've been talking about it for a while, so it
would have been better to do it in person, but it hasn't worked out. So I appreciate making it work.
Next time you're in the city, we'll have a one-on-one Greco-Roman situation.
I just want to come drive your cars again. I don't care about the podcast.
All right. Well, anyway, thanks so much, man. It was a real pleasure.
Talk to you later, brother.
Later, man.
Bye.